This is part 3 of the Intuitive Wellness series. And in this episode, we're going to go deep into finding more body confidence and more body acceptance in ways that you didn't think about. So I'll be sharing with you some ways to kind of rethink how you connect to your body, some sabotaging behaviors you might not even realize you're doing that's stopping you from feeling good in it, and then some habits to help you slowly really build up that self-esteem and security in your body. We are going to go through all of it very quickly in this episode. This is, again, part 3 of the Intuitive Wellness series, showing you a different way to health. If you missed part 1 and 2 on fitness and nutrition, make sure you go back and listen to them. What's interesting here with this series is I meant to record this one several weeks ago. And the twist of all twists, or the universe, is that when I was going to record this one, I actually got really ill. And it was a reminder of what it feels like when your body is working against you instead of for you. It was a reminder of that, because that feeling I had mostly gotten past from some of the tactics and techniques we'll talk about in this episode. But when you are ill and your body is doing things that you don't want it to, it's that feeling of helplessness again. And so it was a really interesting reminder of what it's like to be in a position where you feel like you're doing all these healthy and positive habits and you're telling yourself that you can change your mindset, but it just lingers and it feels like nothing is making a difference. And the body confidence journey is kind of a lot like that, in that when I got ill, I really thought this was, I don't even know what kind of flu it was, followed by this horrible cough where I couldn't sleep and I was coughing so much I was, throat gagging. It was similar in that I thought, okay, every day I'm going to get a little better. That's how you heal, right? Every day you get a little bit better. But it's not actually a linear journey, because I had moments where I thought I was getting better and I wasn't coughing and I felt really good. And then I would just go back and have an entire night where I didn't stop. And so much that I couldn't even speak because my throat was tied up. It's the same way with this journey, that the getting better is so small, sometimes you don't even notice it. And sometimes you feel like you're going so far backwards that you don't ever know if you'll get ahead. And so I want to be compassionate to that and tell you that if you feel that way, you are not alone. It's having faith and confidence in your body that you will eventually get there. So let's go through some of the ways to do that. Now, first, I'll talk about the body connection. Then I'll talk about some habits that can help you. And then I'll also give you a little insight into some of the sabotaging behaviors that we get stuck in. So first, let's talk about body connection. This is the biggest thing that is missing when it comes to acceptance and confidence. It's impossible for you to feel good in your body if you have this separation from it. And a lot of the things we do, like dieting, like overtraining, like ignoring our internal cues of when to eat or when to stop exercising, all of those force us to disconnect. And even when we exercise, some of us, we don't actually connect to our body. We just zone out. And when you do that, you are perpetuating this feeling of, I am good enough when I look a certain way. Because if you are not connected to your body, of course, your standard of judgment is going to be, what does it look like? And oftentimes we decide that based on comparison. So the big thing here is reconnecting. And when you reconnect, you have one of two things that happen. Either you get body neutrality, which I would argue is what most of us have most of the time. That's when you don't have these negative views about your body necessarily. You're just kind of neutral about it. And you understand that caring for your body and the habits that you need to do are to support it, not necessarily to change it. Already you might feel like, okay, that's not something that I do. Body acceptance is going a bit further. It's saying, okay, my body is good the way that it is right now. I am fine with it. You can still want to change your strength. You can still want to improve the way that you do things, but fundamentally, you are okay with how it is now. And the irony is that it's very hard to get sustainable fitness transformations and really make habits stick if you can't first shift to this body acceptance, or at least neutrality. Because if you're just running on body shame or hate or comparison, that will tire you out. And at some point, your brain is going to react and say, nope, we don't want to do this anymore. We're going to eat more foods. We're not going to exercise. All of those things are going to work against you. So the funny, but not so funny thing is getting to this point of acceptance, even if you're not happy where you are now. And I know that that's a really hard thing to do, but honestly, it's the same with anything you do in life, in your career. If you can't be present in the job you're in now and the work you're doing now, it is hard for you to show up the best you possibly can. If you're always living for the next promotion, the next thing, it's very hard for you to have sustainable fulfillment. And so we see it in every other part of our lives, but for some reason with our bodies, we don't see it happening. So the first step here really is, can I get to a point where at the very least, I am happy to do the behaviors that support my body, from the food I eat to the exercise I do, just because I know that it supports me, not necessarily because it changes me. That is continual work. Let me give you an example. So if you think about if you're developing any skill, let's say you're developing the skill of writing. In the beginning, you are going to be very self-critical. You're not going to like what you are writing down. You're going to feel like the words are so bad. You are going to compare it to other people who are way further along than you. If you can't get to a point where you're happy to just keep showing up and keep doing this, trusting the process that eventually you will get to the point where you will be quote unquote good, then you're never going to have the practice, the refinement, establishing the habits to ever get good. And so a lot of us, what we do is just like the novice writer that never gets past that learning stage. We continue to criticize our very basic entry-level work, which is, you're doing fitness, you doing whatever you're doing, instead of accepting that this is going to get better for me, but I can't just focus on the end goal. I have to focus on what I'm doing right now. Some of the things that get in the way are certain behaviors that you might not even realize. One of the biggest ones that is obvious are things like criticizing your body. I hate my arms. I hate my thighs. I don't like the stretch marks. Anything you draw attention to, you are going to focus on again and again. We know this to be true. If you think about something, you see it everywhere. So if you're always thinking about your flaws, then you are always going to see them and obsess about them. Other subtle things that you might not realize you're doing are things like body checking. Body checking I always used to do. And this is when you pass a mirror and you look. It's not, I'm looking to see how my outfit is or checking my hair, or I've been outside all day sweating and I just want to see what it looks like. I'm checking because I need to look at my body because I feel insecure in some way. And it's a lot throughout the day. You'll notice it if you start counting. The other part of that could be things like just gripping the fat around your belly or your arms, jiggling your arms. Like all of this stuff is body checking, and it's a compulsive behavior that we do often that again reinforces I am not happy with what I have. And that is what I'm going to obsess with, the scarcity of what I don't have instead of how I can move forward. It's also things like certain clothing that you wear that hides everything. You're not wearing it because it's comfortable or because it flatters your shape. You're wearing it because it hides every single thing. And if you are doing that, again, you are disconnecting from your body. This is why I will always say to people, please don't wait to go shopping until you are the right size. because you are going to spend all this time suffering between then and now. If you even get to that point versus if you start now, if you're putting on clothes that make you feel good already, then it's a lot easier to show up for yourself, to feel good. I'm telling you, when you feel okay in your body, it's a lot easier to exercise. It's a lot easier to go for certain kinds of foods. If you are driven by shame, you are driven by comparison, you're lugging a huge bag of resistance behind you with every habit you try to do. And this is why so many people break down and they can't continue on. Another kind of sabotaging behavior you might not recognize as much is comparison. So this could be simple, like you look at someone and say, I wish I had her legs, but it's not the sense of appreciating her legs. It's really degrading your own. It could also be, you're out with friends and you comment on someone else's body. The big rule of thumb here is don't ever comment on anyone's body, because not only is it detrimental to them, it also reinforces in your mind what is good and what is bad. And that is a really sneaky one that we don't think about. Now that I've been in this field for over 10 years, I notice it in conversation all the time. It is pervasive when you see how much we talk about other people's bodies and how much it reinforces perfection, not just for them, but for us as well. Drawing inspiration from what someone has achieved is very different from directing envy, which brings you down. And that's kind of a distinction to work on. Now, there's also like small things that we say. So for example, I was visiting my family, and my mom, who I grew up with and has always been very body neutral. I have always felt, none of my body issues came from her because she never talked about this stuff. But as she's gotten older and she hasn't been as much involved in fitness and it has been harder for her, I see her commenting on her body a lot more. And she said something to me, which I had kind of a very passionate reaction, but I think it reinforces what I'm trying to share with you here. I had said that I was getting rid of my YouTube workouts that I used to have when I was a trainer. And she was saying to me, well, you should save your workouts because you will appreciate how you looked 10 years from now. And I said, well, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be the person who lives in their body from my memories. I don't want to be the person who looks back on my own videos of years ago and feels like, oh, I wish I had that body still. I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person in my 50s, 60s, and 70s who is active and happy, who recognizes that, yes, my body is different, but it's okay. And if I look back on those videos, I want it to be like, oh, this was my career and this was a fun workout. But it's small comments like that that keep us really trapped in this idea of what our body should be. And these seem harmless. They seem like they don't matter. But imagine if I was someone who was really self-conscious and really obsessed with my body like I used to be. That would be a comment which would make me think and obsess a lot. I'd probably go back and see my even older videos to see how has my body changed. So we have to be so mindful, not just of what we say, but also what other people are saying to you that can kind of reinforce this. And if you stop and think, is there someone in your life who you notice says this stuff, either to you or about other people? Just starting to be aware of that. Now, the last thing that can be really a sabotaging behavior or mindset when it comes to trying to find confidence is body dysmorphia. And this is why most of us get stuck in yo-yo dieting. It's why we over-exercise. It's why we can't just be comfortable with how we are. And I would say that 90% of all fitness influencers and professionals have body dysmorphia. Because when you're in an industry that really emphasizes perfection, it's hard to ever see yourself there. And I have known so many trainers that are just in the kind of shape that would be on Women's Health, Men's Health magazine, and they feel crap in their bodies. They don't want to wear certain clothes. They freak out if they have a day where they had pizza. Even though to the outside eye, you would say, okay, you would be on a magazine cover, because the way that they look is not the way that they see themselves. And this is really the tricky thing, is it's very hard for you to be objective about the way that your body actually looks because you have so much baggage with it. I remember for me, the way that this started was I was living in Argentina. I was studying abroad. And at least at that time, the fashionable size was very thin, super thin, flat stomach, no hips, very tiny, tiny, tiny. And that is not my natural body shape. But all of these girls I would see in their early 20s were just drinking coffee and smoking. And I barely saw them eat. Maybe some bread, maybe a tiny bit of meat, almost nothing. And because that was what I saw, my vision of what my body looked like was distorted, because I thought I was so big and compared to those girls. And so I was running twice a day for hours. I was going to the gym. I was barely eating anything, to the point where I've talked about this before. I was living with a roommate, bless her, and she had this dulce de leche cream caramel sauce, jug of it. I remember eating that in one go. It was huge. It was probably 16 ounces because my body had been so deprived of nutrients. And when I look back on photos from that time when I thought I was so big, I was so small, unhealthily so. Because you just objectively, when you have that baggage, you cannot see. And in that state of mind, I would not have been able to find body confidence if I was still obsessed, with a comparison and looking that way. Our second big topic here is how your negative body image is going to fuel these sabotaging behaviors. So this goes back to the point of, if you have body neutrality, you are much more likely to eat in a nourishing way, to exercise well. It's a lot easier for you, because what we often do is, if you have a negative body image, you have all of these emotional baggage with you, a lot of emotional coping, and it leads to excessive restriction. It leads to eating disorders. It leads to binging, because you think, I look so bad. What's the point? I'm working so hard. Let me just eat all these potato chips. Let me eat all these fries. Let me eat all this candy, because that negative self-image is fueling it. It's also a lot of times misusing exercise to cover your body image issues. So over-exercising when you feel fat, trying to fix your thighs. It's not looking at your overall health or your enjoyment. It is all about, how can I use exercise to adapt what I see in the mirror? And you might recognize this as a behavior that you have. There's nothing wrong with trying to get stronger. There's nothing wrong with trying to change in a sustainable way. But it does matter what your intention is behind it. I remember I ignored so much my body cues. My body image was so poor, and this was right around the time just after Argentina, that I was running even harder, and I wasn't stretching, and I wasn't listening to that pull of my tendons and my knees. I didn't want to pause and take a break, because then I could gain weight. And I remember vividly, I was running along the east side of New York, along the water, and I felt this snap all of a sudden, and my knee went one way, and I fell on the ground, on the concrete. Early 20s has happened. Nobody's around, because it's 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, because I hadn't yet found work. And I'm crawling back to the apartment where I'm staying. And I do mean almost crawling, because it took me hours to get back there on what would have been a 30-minute run. And I can't move, really walk, for a month. That was kind of the reckoning, where I realized you need to listen to your body, because you were so afraid of gaining weight that you couldn't take some days off of your exercise, but instead you are a month out, and there is nothing you can do right now. I'm sure some of you have had injuries like this and maybe you didn't change. It will continue to happen until you start to look at, I want to exercise for a different reason, and I am going to be totally in tune with what my body says to do or not to do. Especially if you are not working with a qualified trainer, you really need to listen to your body there. What we do so much is we use exercise as a punishment to our bodies instead of a way to celebrate them. And this is how it becomes unsustainable and harmful and really continues to fuel these negative behaviors around it. And so if you look at what is movement that you actually enjoy, do you have something that you really love to do before? Bring that back. It doesn't need to be the only thing, but you really need something that recenters in your mind. Movement is not just to make me smaller. Movement is to make me feel better. Now, our next thing here is practical tips for body acceptance. So we've just talked about why you might have sabotaging behaviors, what body neutrality looks like, but let's talk about how can you actually create more of this body acceptance. So first is creating a safe space for body neutrality to happen. For me, one of the places where I have felt best in my body is in Brazil, where I am currently. And that's because a lot of the bodies are like mine. They are wider hips, wider thighs. And there's a lot of strength training, extremely strong women. And that is acceptable here and has been for many years, well before it was in the US, UK, Australia, etc., Canada. And so for me, it's always been a really nice space to feel good in my body. That's not the case for everyone here, especially people who grow up here. And I remember speaking to a friend who said that she felt like on the beach, she could wear anything and she wouldn't think twice. And you see that. There's all body shapes wearing almost nothing, wearing whatever they want here and feeling comfortable. And walking along the beach, no cover-ups, playing volleyball. It's completely natural. But she said when she was at a pool at someone's house or whatever, like the recreational pool, if she were around even friends, she would feel self-conscious. And so this is a clear example of safe space for body neutrality and unsafe. Because here at the beach, everyone is encouraged to just have their body enjoy the ocean. At the pool, perhaps, there's more judgment. If you can create that safe space for you, and it doesn't need to be a physical space, it can just really be a sense in your mind of being okay in your body, then you will be able to do stuff and wear different things and not think so much about it. So the first thing is, how do I create a safe space for my body? And sometimes that also means who you surround yourself with. You know how we talked about, you probably remember someone in your family or friends that make comments all the time. Minimizing those interactions if you can, even eliminating them if that's possible. Creating a safe space for you to be, because otherwise it's going to be very hard to get into this accepting your body. The next part of this is embracing your body's marks and your imperfections. I'm talking things like cellulite, dimples, all those things on your body that you don't like. Accepting them now, whether they change as you work out, as you eat differently, whatever, but accepting that they are here now, not obsessing about them. I have on my inner thighs, it looks like scratch marks. They're stretch marks that I had since I was 17. Doesn't matter how much I exercise or what I eat, they are there. And I could very easily obsess about them. You know, I love the beach. I love being in the bikini. You can see them. But they're just part of my body. They are just there. There are other marks that have gone away. But it's easier to just say it is here. I'm going to continue to do habits and behaviors that support my body. And if they go away, they go away. It's this theory of just accepting even as you have hope of change, which is hard to hold those two ideas in our minds, but this is really how you can go forward with more motivation. When men get marks, they're scars. and they are honored for battles fought or risk taken or funny stories or scrapes they got out of. And I never understood why it is so different for us as women. Because a body without marks, it's one that's been hidden. It's one that hasn't lived. And so why do we think of them so differently just because someone says this one is attractive and this one is not? Lastly, we are going to talk about 5 habits that will really help you with positive self-esteem, positive body image, body acceptance, body confidence. These are based on what we've discussed earlier, but I'm laying them out here for you. So 1 is limit your mirror time and your body checking. So reducing how much you are grabbing the fat around your arms or your belly or constantly looking in the mirror is a really good way to reorient away from obsessing about the way you look. Habit number 2, surround yourself with positive influences from what's on your social media feed to the people that you are around, to the movies that you watch. Habit number 3, wear clothes now that make you feel confident. If you don't own any, find some. Go to the vintage store if you need to. Pull out something, but use clothes that actually make you feel good now, because that will give you positive momentum going forward, much more so than, the pair of jeans that you wore 10 years ago and you're waiting to get back in. I know, I was there too. I did it too. Last one, habit number 5, morning ritual. So I know when people say morning rituals, it's become so cliche. It doesn't really stick. The way I want you to think about it is this. If the first things I hear and see in the day trigger my thoughts and the way I act, that means they're the most powerful. So if you can do 1 mindful movement, reconnecting to your body, whether that is a little bit of breath work, a tiny bit of stretching, anything like that, you're setting the tone of, I am going to be present in this body. I'm going to care for it. 2, affirmations for self-love or body acceptance. These don't need to be super woo-woo. It can just be, I am in my body today and it's going to carry me forward. Or I'm working towards strength and I'm grateful for the body that does it. It can sound trite to you. It can sound silly to you. But think about how many times a day you're saying the opposite of an affirmation. And that might make you rethink, can I just do one little woo-woo type thing in the beginning of the day? And then the third thing is a visualization, which you can do while you're doing your movements or your breath work. And that's just seeing yourself with the absence of body shame. You don't even need to visualize the perfect body or anything like that. It's just thinking about what it would feel like if you already were comfortable in your body now. Today, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about connecting to your body, some behaviors that might be causing you to not feel so good in it, and habits to really help you find that confidence. In the rest of this series, I've also talked about fitness that feels good, nutrition that nourishes you. It's not based on counting, all this stuff to reach fitness goals in a sustainable way. So number 1, make sure you've listened to all the episodes if you haven't already. And number 2, I would really encourage you to share this episode with someone who you think is so amazing and you just want them to feel the confidence that you feel towards them. Final reminder too, that if you really want to reconnect with your body and you want a really easy resource to do that, I have the Rio Plan, really quick workouts. It's $10 a month now, hundreds of workouts, training plan. And my main goal in that is just to help you feel a little more connected to your body, to start your day with that movement and with that confidence. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.